This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everybody. Jordan Girth here with the National Weather Service Office of Observations. Thank you so much for joining us for the Satellite Book Club seminar series. This is session number 183. The title of today's presentation, Monitoring Harmful Algal Blooms in Sargassum with Satellite Products. The presenters are Erin Houlihan and Leanne Simpson from UCAR COMET. Our facilitator is Andy Latto, GeoXO User Engagement Lead. Just a few reminders, this session is being recorded. There will be an opportunity for Q&A after the presentation. I would encourage any attendee to post their question in the chat and we will field them in the order they are asked. If you have not signed in using your full name, please specify your name when asking a question in the chat. We're always looking for future presenters for the Satellite Book Club. Please contact the Tower S team, Kashad Bowman and Emily Maddox, if you are interested in presenting. The training team can help create training materials that may be unavailable or you may be unaware of. Ross Van Til with the Office of the Chief Learning Officer can help with that. Also, if you are a National Weather Service employee and are interested in attending the upcoming GOES-U launch, currently scheduled for June 25th, at your own cost, please send me an email. Kashad will be posting my email in the chat and we can send you the nomination form. We are looking forward to seeing some of our NWS staff on site for this upcoming GOES-U launch, the last in the GOES-R series. As a reminder, the launch date is subject to change up to the day and time of the expected launch due to weather and other conditions. I'd like to thank our Tower S team, Kashad Bowman and Emily Maddox, the Office of the Chief Learning Officer, the GOES-R JPSS program, and our facilitator today for the Satellite Book Club, and of course, all of you for being with us. Without further ado, let me get a little bit deeper introduction into Erin and Leanne. Erin Houlihan is an associate scientist with the COMET Program at the University Center for Atmospheric Research, or UCAR. In her current role, she develops educational and training resources primarily in the hydrology field for agencies such as USGS, NOS, and WMO. Erin has a K-12 teaching background and was a fellow where she studied marine science in New Zealand. In her free time, you can find her rock climbing in the mountains or running on the trails near Boulder, Colorado. She is joined by Leanne Simpson, an associate scientist with the COMET program at UCAR as well. In her current role, she develops educational and training resources, predominantly in the satellite, aviation, numerical weather prediction, and impact-based forecasting program areas. She has a background in weather forecasting and operational forecasting training in South Africa. She enjoys amateur photography and can be found stalking birds and wildlife while hiking or mountain biking. Erin and Leanne, welcome to the Satellite Book Club.
Thanks. Should we get started?
Yes, please.
Cool. So thanks everyone for having Leanne and I here today. As you can see in this slide here, if you can join us on Poll Everywhere, that would be great. Some of you may have already done it. You can use either a new tab on your desktop or your mobile device. You can scan the QR code in that upper right-hand corner. And I think the link was just posted in the chat as well. You can hit skip for now. It'll ask you to register for credit. You all don't need credit, so just hit skip for now, and then same thing with the name. You can hit skip and remain anonymous, or you can enter your name if you so please. And once you do that, we'll come back to this Poll Everywhere a little bit later in the session, so you can go ahead and put that tab aside or the mobile device to the side. And if you're not able to get logged on now or something like that, we will have the QR code and the link in the chat, so you can always get set up later once we get to those questions. So I'll give people about 10 more seconds to get going and then to get it logged on, and then we'll get going. Awesome. So if you were able to do that, it should just kind of show up the screen that says waiting for COMET Workshops presentation to begin. And as I mentioned, we'll come back to that later. And if you aren't able to get logged on, the QR code will be up when those questions come on. So I'll go ahead and get us started. Thanks again for having Leanne and I here today. We're excited to talk to you all about one of the lessons we recently published. As mentioned, Leanne and I are both scientists with the COMET Program, and we're here today to talk to you about this lesson, monitoring harmful algal blooms and sargassum with satellite products. Today we'll share some of our instructional approaches that we took when developing this lesson, and let you all interact with a few pieces of the lesson as well so you can get a sense of what it entails. Before we launch into this specific lesson, I'll give a brief overview of COMET in general. Some of you may have heard of COMET, some of you may have not. So what COMET does, we provide free online self-paced learning in addition to in-person workshops, blended learning, and online workshops. This lesson and many others are available on METED, which is our flagship learning management system, as well as the NOAA Commerce Learning Center. And we provide training in a realm of topics, so in weather, water, and climate, etc. And we develop training based on specific user needs and requirements. So working with subject matter experts, working with the target audience of lessons, we will address specific performance needs. And dependent on what those performance needs are, we can select methodologies that will best suit those needs. So we develop lessons that have simulations, scenario-based training, job aids, tutorials, etc. This lesson that we'll talk about today is a combination of a tutorial type lesson and scenario-based interactions for learners to practice. And so what Leanne and I have done to help you all show what this looks like is pulled a couple examples from this lesson to show you what that looks like. This would be an example of scenario-based training where learners are actually given photographs of the coastline along Barbados where they have to then do a task, analyze using those photos, etc. So that's scenario-based training. We have different ways to visualize data. So on that upper left-hand side, you can see how learners can select different products for comparison. So say you want to look at true color imagery and you also want to look at sea surface temperature, and then you can use the image slider to compare those two images. And on the right-hand side, we have an example of a drawing interaction. So in this case, learners are actually able to circle on a map, where sargassum might have washed up on the coast of Barbados or things like that. And lastly, learners can choose their own path. So in this lesson, a learner can choose if they want to start with HABs or sargassum, and then within HABs, they could start, okay, do I want to go to the Lake Erie case study first, or do I want to go to the Washington coast? So those are some of the ways that we can design lessons. And with that, I'll hand it over to Leanne to talk a little bit about sargassum versus HABs and delve a little bit more into our lesson.
Great, thank you so much, Erin, and good morning to everyone. It's good to be here. Thanks for having us. So yeah, with the HABs and Sargassum lesson that we are walking you through a little bit today and explaining about comes from a user need. So COMET will respond generally to a user need or a need within the community to provide some training on something. In this particular lesson, our user base was not a scientific base. It's not aimed at the experts in the field of satellite meteorology and the use of satellite for ocean monitoring, and similarly, not directed at any forecaster group. It's mainly for an interest group, and that sometimes comes out of a misconception that's out there in the public. Could be one of the reasons why we're triggered to create some kind of learning solution for this. And one of the misconceptions that exists between sargassum and harmful algal blooms is that indeed they're the same thing. So very often a lot of these aspects come up, or the topics come up in the media, and people will see, oh, sargassum is coming, and there's a lot of negative press around it. And if you say the word harmful algal bloom, people think it's always harmful, and they put these two things together. So we try to address these kind of things in the lesson. And just on the screen, what we have is an example of what sargassum potentially can look like while it's washing up on shore in the Caribbean versus something like the red tide, which is totally different. And in general, the HABs can be totally different. They're a much broader group of algae, whereas sargassum is just one type of macroalgae that is experienced. So we're going to unpack this a little bit now and show you how we dealt with some of the satellite aspects of monitoring and evaluating where you can find some of these HABs and harmful algal blooms and sargassum over the oceans. So Erin, if we can go to our next slide, and we'll start explaining how we're going to get you all involved in the next few minutes. So on the screen, what we have now is what we at COMET would call an interaction. You may see it as a question while you're within our lesson. So you're working through content, you get to this interaction, and because we're in a satellite-based lesson, which is not aimed at satellite experts, so it's aimed at people who want more information about how to monitor Sargassum and HABs. So what we have here is what we would call, it's a multiple choice question generally, but you have 9 possible answers that you can choose from in the question. So instead of just having a list of, hey, what products are useful and listing 9 things, because satellite is so visual and interactive with the imagery, what we do is we say, well, here are 9 thumbnails that you can explore. And when you answer the question of which of these products and satellite platforms are most useful for HAB and Sargassum monitoring and identification, make your choice by clicking on the box. And because people might not know a lot about these products, they don't look a lot like infrared imagery or vis imagery or RGBs, they're very different. What you can do actually is to hover your mouse over any of the satellite products that are listed there, like the OLI, and it'll give you a breakdown. What does OLI stand for? Which satellite is it on? And what are some of the resolutions, temporal resolutions, spatial resolution, and generally what are you looking for? So you don't need an extensive background in satellite technology or understanding to be able to do this lesson. The other thing you can do is to actually click on any of the images, and it will enlarge that image so that you can have a much better look at it. And so Erin is doing a great job of demonstrating how this works. And so this is how we want people to interact with satellite data within the lesson. Right, so if we go back now to the slide presentation, we're going to ask you all to take a couple of minutes and actually interact with this question as if you were in our lesson. So in the chat box now, Erin or Kashad will share a link, and we're going to give you 2 minutes to go to that link and actually go and mouse over some of the products and answer the question of which of these products do you think would be most useful in identifying HABs and Sargassum. And so you can play with that for 2 minutes. We'll have a countdown, and then we'll all come back in and talk about why we chose this and some of the benefits that we see on that. If you do struggle to link to this interaction, don't worry, it is in our lesson as well, and you'll be able to access this at any time after this presentation as well. So Erin, I think start the countdown. Let's give everyone 2 minutes, which is a long time for me not to be speaking, but we'll let you interact, and then we'll come back together in 2 minutes time and talk about what you have experienced. Just a reminder, this is not on Poll Everywhere. This is a link that you can copy and just put into your browser to go to. We haven't started the Poll Everywhere interactions just yet. This is something separate that you can interact with yourself. We have
about 30 seconds.
Erin, you and I are on the same page yet. 30 seconds to go, and we'll come back and get everybody back to the presentation. Okay, so time is up, everyone. I'm sure the 2 minutes wasn't long enough. There's a lot going on there, especially if these products are new. But again, the link you've just used will be available after this presentation. And if that link isn't available after a day or two, the lesson itself, this is an interaction we've taken directly out of our lesson. So don't stress, you can access it at any time going forward. So why did we choose this type of interaction? And as I said before we started, the use of imagery and graphics within a satellite lesson is really important, because that's what satellite is about, particularly for people who are accessing it to try and interpret what is going on. Over the ocean areas, it's a little bit more tricky. Even seeing some of these HABs and Sargassum using satellite it's not a perfect science. There's a lot of algorithms running in the background and processing of imagery that's going on and averaging imagery over multiple days to try and get some of these aspects and to show up. So we use this because it allows the learner or the user of the lesson to get into the data. And meteorologists really like that. Let's get into some data, let's do something, but other people as well. It shows you, we're trying to show what things would really look like if you went to one of the platforms to be able to look at the information yourself, and gives you a little bit of a description. And then when you get within the lesson itself, you'd have multiple tries, multiple turns to try and get it right. And every time you got it incorrect, you would get customized feedback. So depending on what you were choosing, you would get feedback that is based on your choices yourself. So we can build that into our lessons to help you learn as an individual. And we can also use this to introduce extra resources and information, which could be quite boring to just read through. So imagine you had 9 pages of information about each satellite. How attractive is that versus seeing it and being able to get a look and feel? And of course, in that feedback, hopefully you all selected something. Maybe some of you still are. You select done. And within the feedback is also a reference table about the satellites. So in one interaction, we try and introduce you to the satellites and go forward from there. So that's just an example of how we bring the data and information to the learners. All right, Erin, let's start a scenario for this group and see how everyone deals with that. So we spoke about scenario training or scenario methodology to help with training. And this is part of what we did in this lesson. So if you remember that Erin was talking about that map, and you could choose your own path. You could go HABs or Sargassum, and then you could choose your area. So for the Sargassum, we took you down to Barbados within the lesson and to say, well, you have a challenge. And we like to challenge learners. Those of you who have taken our lessons before know that. So in this particular lesson, the challenge is that somebody sent you some drone footage of Sargassum along the Barbados coast, but they don't say where. The question is, if you had to go and use the satellite data available to you, would you be able to pick where these photographs of Sargassum were potentially taken? And so this is called an evaluation task. So you need to go into the satellite imagery, evaluate what is there, and make a decision based on that. So that's what we're going to ask you all to do. And so, Erin, if you could go to the next slide, we can give everybody a little bit of a tune-up to what's going to happen now. We're going to give you that challenge right now. And the challenge is, where were those photographs of Sargassum taken around the island of Barbados? Normally, within the lesson, we would give you multiple tabs of information and graphics. So you would have examples of each one of those 5 or 6 different satellite products, like the MCI, which we have on the screen at the moment on the left-hand side, as well as the alternative floating algae index and others to help you go through some data sets. We'd also give you web links and URLs where you could go to different websites and access the reports and read them for yourself. But for the purpose of our presentation today, I'm just going to give you 2 pieces of information. The one on the left is a maximum chlorophyll index product that is accessible online. And the important thing to note with the legend on that one is any value above 0 is showing the potential for something like Sargassum to be present in the water. So that's where the coloring comes in. any of those colors that are moving away from the dark blues, so going into the turquoise, cyan, and particularly into the yellows and reds, where those pixels are yellow and red, is just a much higher possibility of it being something like sargassum. Those dark, round black areas are where data is not available, and generally that could be because of cloud cover during the pass of the satellites. On the right-hand side, we have an example that is taken from the experimental Sargassum inundation risk report, which is a report based on 7 days of information which coastlines are at risk of being inundated by sargassum in the short term. In this example, we see Barbados is kind of in the middle of that image, and anything with a red or an orange color is a medium to high likelihood that there could be coastal inundation of sargassum in the near term. So this is where we're going to get you into a poll everywhere in just a minute, but I'm going to give you 30 seconds to have a look at both of these images and think of those photographs you saw of the sargassum coming up on the beach and come up with your own answer as to where you think sargassum is along the Barbados coastline. So Erin, if you could start the countdown, we give everybody 30 seconds to just consider the information available. Okay, time is up. Now we are going to activate the poll everywhere. And so if you can go there now, you will see that there is a map of Barbados on the screen. And you can just select an area by tapping on your screen, either with a mouse click or with your finger, depending on what kind of device you're looking at, to place a marker basically anywhere along the coast of Barbados where you think sargassum, those photographs of sargassum were taken based on the satellite related products that were used in the previous slide. So I'll give you 30 seconds to do that as well, and then we'll move on.
You might have to refresh your browser if you can't see the question.
Thanks for that reminder, Erin. Okay, so should we have a look at what some of those responses look like? Let's see where everybody chose, where they thought those photographs were taken from. All right, so lots along generally the east coast, particularly the northeast, the southeast, somewhat along the west coast. Let's have a look and see where the correct answers in fact were. All right, so if your answers fell within those two blocks, generally the person who chose one just to the southeast of the top block, I think you're close enough. But yes, you have interpreted the information correctly. Obviously in the lesson there's a lot more information that goes in the background, but this is just an example of how we get you to try and evaluate and use the information for yourself. So this was one of our examples. I'm going to hand the control and mic back to Erin to talk you through another example that we used in the lesson.
Yeah, thanks, Leanne. Good job, everyone, with that challenge. We're going to give you another challenge. So now we're going to go into a HAB scenario. It is late July. We're going to take you to Lake Erie. So you get a call from the organizer of a triathlon this weekend with the swim portion planned to take place in Lake Erie. The organizer wants to know about the harmful algal bloom conditions along the shoreline in order to plan the best route for the swim. I'm going to give you 30 seconds, I'll start the countdown on the screen momentarily, to examine these 4 products available on the screen: the forecasted bloom position, the total bioavailable phosphorus, the observed bloom position, and the vertical mixing forecast. And then you will determine which products are most useful when planning the triathlon event this weekend. As Leanne mentioned in the lesson, these might be tabs, but for now, they're just up on the screen. And I'll give you all 30 seconds, and then we'll go into another poll everywhere question. And in this case, it's more of the types of data rather than the specific, like these are just the types of data rather than the exact data from the state. So which types of data? Okay. With that, we'll see if it pulls up. Smells. Okay. So again, you might have to refresh your screen, but hopefully now on Poll Everywhere, you can go ahead and answer this question. I might have to refresh this page as well. Oops. Let's see if this works. There we go. Okay, awesome. I can see you all are responding. That is great. Thank you for participating. And in this case as well, you can select all that apply. So you're not limited to one response. So which of the following products will be most useful for identifying areas potentially at risk of HABs during the triathlon event this weekend? Again, select all that apply. I'll give you all about 10 more seconds to get your responses in, and then we'll show the correct answers. Okay, so it looks like, cool, there's some consensus. 3 products seem to be the most useful with a couple answers for the last one. And I know you all probably can't quite see this. We'll see if I can zoom out. Great. So there is consensus on those 3 products. I'll kind of walk you through a little bit. The current Sentinel-3 satellite imagery would be useful, right? Where is the bloom now? The vertical mixing forecast would be useful to know. Is it expected to, if it's at the surface, stay at the surface? If expected to go deeper into the water column, would we not be able to pick it up via satellite, but it's still there and helping plan the route for the swim? As well as the forecasted bloom position. It looks like that was the highest percent of respondents. Yes, you want to know where it would be forecasted to be. The bioavailable phosphorus for the year so far is often used when forecasting kind of the like seasonal HAB assessment. So what can we predict more on a slightly longer term basis than rather like how can I plan for just this upcoming weekend? So good job with that, folks. And with that, I'll head into key takeaways. So through these scenario-based trainings and through visiting, the Washington coast and Lake Erie and Barbados, these are some of the takeaways that learners might walk away with in this lesson. The use of polar orbiting satellite data and products is essential. There's various NOAA websites and online platforms that provide updated, reliable satellite-based information, and our lesson kind of walked learners through that in a little more depth. And lastly, it can be difficult to monitor HABs and Sargassum through satellites alone. However, satellite-based monitoring does provide observations at unprecedented spatial and temporal scales. So those are some of our key takeaways. And with that, we will wrap it up, and thank you for your time. Feel free to follow us at COMET at any of these platforms shown, and we've also included in here the general MedEd link, as well as this specific lesson link and our emails in case you want to reach out and have any follow-up questions or thoughts. We would love to hear from you. So thank you for your time.
Hey, Erin and Leanne, thank you so much for this presentation. I'm relatively new to my role as GeoXO, which user engagement lead, which is launched several years down the road, which will have ocean color. So it's great to see like all this information that's actually available today to know and monitor ocean color now. So what I want everybody to do is stay on the line and think of questions you have for Erin and Leanne over the next couple of minutes, and please put those into the chat room. And when you do so, put your full name in there too when you're asking that question. Emily's got to put a post in there for if you're interested in presenting and facilitating future book club presentations, and she'll put the link to that form on there. Before we go to these questions that you're putting in the chat room, for next week, 1 week from today, Thursday, April 4th at noon, Bill Schoberg from the LEO, Low Earth Orbiting Program Office, will discuss NOAA LEO office products, which are always under development, including stakeholder fingerprints that are everywhere. I also encourage you to contact the Tower S team, which is Kashad Bowman and Emily Maddox, for questions about the Satellite Book Club or for configuration of satellite products. At this point, if we have any questions, we're going to go ahead and take a look at those in the chat room. And if you're still typing those in there, I do have one question off the top of my head here. Your second to last slide mentioned there's various platforms, websites for NOAA that include ways to actually access the satellite information. What are some of those, if you can provide those with us, so if we want to actually monitor things on our own in real time, how can we get that information?
Yeah, that's a great question. Leanne, I don't know if you have any of those links pulled up and you want to put some of them in the chat. We can also take you to the point in our lesson.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly what I'm going to do. So everyone, if you watch the chat box, I'm going to put in a list of resources. Also, if you go to our lesson, the Monitoring HABs and Sargassum on MetEd, one of the very last pages you'll get to is a list of resources that you can go to yourself. But as I put them in, what I'm going to do is to give you the websites generally that we used, and you know, those were based a lot. And thank you, I see NOAA Coast Watch. NOAA Coast Watch is definitely one of the key platforms to use. You know, each of the nodes operates separately. So the West Node, Central Node, East Node, they each have their own products and way of doing things, archive data, etc. You know, we also have the Atlantic Oceanographic MetLab, AOML. They really are pretty good with what they've got going on. And so, yeah, I'm going to put those all into the chat box. You can grab those yourselves and go and have a look at them. They're really interesting. There's some really great work going on out there. And you might notice, you know, a lot of what's in the lesson that we are sharing with you is free and available online, and it's not necessarily about the products themselves, in terms of, we're not trying to go into a lot of the satellite details. We're very much trying to get into the, how do you, as an interested party, how can you interact with some of this information? You know, so the user list is a little bit different from the normal scientific community. So yeah, there's a couple of, I see there's a couple of, here we go, resources in the chat box for you to go and explore. I think the first one is actually linking to my Google Chrome account, but the last one is covering that AOML site, which deals with the Sargassum inundation risk report. And then the very last one I'm going to put in now is the USF, the University of South Florida, their platform as well. So on these platforms, it's amazing what the teams have done to make information available. If you're looking for Sargassum, you can go down a Sargassum rabbit hole. If you're looking for HABs, you can go down a HABs rabbit hole. And if you enjoy satellite imagery, at the moment, I'm sitting looking at Trinidad and Tobago, where there's quite a large feedback coming in from the chlorophyll index approaching them from the east, and that's in real time, because we're in that time of year at the moment where Sargassum starts to bloom and starts to move into the Caribbean and the Gulf. So enjoy going through that. Try and get some work done later in the day as well, because you'll get sucked in. It's really interesting.
Great, thanks, Leanne. Yeah, everybody, don't be shy. Don't forget, you can type in these questions into the chat room, or if you want to actually verbally ask, you can mention that as well. This is good information because my family lives in Florida, and when red tide hits, everything shuts down. So it'd be interesting to be able to actually monitor that in real time. I do have one question in the chat room from Matt Gunshore. Hopefully I pronounced it correctly. He's asking, does GOES-R series ABI have good spectral bands for harmful algae blooms and or sargassum, and just like the spatial resolution? Yeah, so, you know, Matt, the ABI is not the preferred instrument because of the resolution issues, and of course the interference with cloud cover that happens over the ocean. You know, the polar orbiting instruments are a lot better that way, just to get a better spatial resolution, although the temporal resolution isn't great. And that is why the GeoXO, and Andy, I can hand it to you after this, you know, the future instrumentation coming up will have particular ocean color instrumentation on board for this reason. And so you can see it on a wonderful, clear, sunny day where there's no wind and you've got a wonderfully
flat ocean, you might pick up some swirls. You know, if you use your near infrared channels or that you're looking at, you can actually pick up those changes in sea surface temperature if you look closely enough. You know, some of the true color imagery, you might see some type of reflection, but it's going to be pretty pixelated and it's not ideal. And there definitely are efforts in some of the products that the Atlantic Met Lab are working with, is that they can use some of the geostationary information coming in, but it's not the premium piece of data that's going into the algorithms running, because it's not as reliable in that sense as what the polar orbiting information is.
Great, thanks, Leanne. It looks like Rance Hardison also put another link to HAB forecasts in the chat room that looks like it'd be pretty useful to take a look at. And you're right. So yeah, well, a lot of my focus has been what's upcoming, and there's, for those that are on the line, there's a few different satellites going to have additional ocean color. The PACE that just launched, Glimmer, and then down the road several years, it's going to be GeoXO. So there'll be a lot of interesting information coming in from those satellites. And I do have a question for you. So as each of these new satellites are launched and there's new data, are you going to be developing new training materials for these satellites?
I hope so. I'd like to think so. I saw Sherry was online a little earlier, you know, but I'm sure as part of that team that we deal with, you know, with narrowing down the user needs. In the immediate future, though, Andy and everyone else, you know, we're busy working at COMET on an ocean color current capabilities lesson as well. So expanding out of HABs and Sargassum, covering aspects like soil pollution and oil slicks, as well as sediment and dissolved matter, those kind of topics that, or features and phenomena that can already be seen. And then, of course, as the instrumentation and technology evolves and improves in the coming years, I'm sure you'll see COMET and METED, the METED platform, hosting new and updated training material, helping people to interpret this information. Of course, because it will be on your desktop, you'll be able to start getting it. Hopefully, you know, if you're working with the NOAA NWS, you know, through your AWIPS or whatever that the workstation preference is at that time, these things should be available to you in real time, and you should be able to solve for them. So we would definitely, hopefully, be creating learning material in that regard.
Great, thank you. Carrie has a comment or question. Carrie St. Laurent, she'd be happy to chat with anybody who uses or wants to use harmful algae bloom forecast products. So if anybody wants to reach out to Carrie St. Laurent, they can do that. She's got a lot of great resources and areas for expansion for that information. One other question I do have is, so you have this information online, this training module. Somebody wants to learn even more. Is there other training materials that they can access?
Erin, do you want to talk about what the NOAA Coast Watch group also do with their training beyond what we've presented?
Yeah, so COMET has this one lesson, but NOAA Coast Watch is also developing other trainings and lessons on ocean color and other things like that. I'm trying to think of what else. And I think there's also RSET training on kind of the, you know, introduction to remote sensing of harmful algal blooms. And I'll go ahead and share this other same tab. So again, this is the link to, this is what the lesson looks like, and one of the last pages is the additional resources, and we have some of these links. You can go to these online trainings as well, and some other webinars of, you know, Sargassum Watch from space, and so we've linked to some of those other tools as well. And then I know, yeah, NOAA Coast Watch is developing and has trainings out there as well for further information. Yeah, and it looks like someone in the chat that they can speak to, yeah, Coast Watch training as well.
Hi, yes, I'm V. Wegman. I'm the communication specialist for Coast Watch, and I built the learning portal that houses all the training programs for Coast Watch. So at coastwatch.noaa.gov, you will find the training learning portal there, and we have a bunch of lectures, tutorials, and exercises that are free to use, just like COMET, and it ranges from beginner users to expert users. We just launched a module a couple weeks ago about HABs specifically, and we have over a dozen modules there. So you can find a ton there about using remote sensing for HABs and Sargassum.
Okay, great. Thank you. At this time, I'm going to hand it back to Jordan Girth for some final remarks.
Thank you so much, Andy, and thank you so much, Erin and Leanne, for that great interactive presentation. I know I've been receiving a few chats saying we need more satellite book clubs like this, and I agree. It'd be great to have audience participation during the presentation as part of our future book clubs. Also, just want to thank V. V is responsible for our newsletter that you may be receiving from the Tower S team. So thanks so much, V. They do absolutely great work getting that out each and every month. All right, as we look forward to next week, Thursday, April 4th, we've got Bill Schoberg, NOAA's Leo Office's products always under development. And he's going to be talking about how stakeholders are influencing those products. So I hope you'll tune in if you're interested in Leo products. In the meantime, if you have any questions for our Tower S team, Kashad and Emily can handle those questions via email, or you can reach out to them on our Slack channel, using the NWS internal Slack workspace channel, Tower-S. So please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions about satellite. With that, we'll wrap it up for today. I hope everybody is looking forward and having a great spring whenever your spring break comes for you. And see you next week. Take care, everybody. Thanks again.